In the market where human trafficking took place during the ancient Roman era, it wasn't ordinary people being sold, but rather some deformed monsters. Quinlan was also captured by the merchants and found himself encountering a woman who would change his life. The merchant then begins to show Ancaria how Quinlan eats. They drove a goat into an iron cage, and Quinlan extended his stinger to bite the goat's neck upon seeing the food. Ancaria was excited by what she saw, stating that Quinlan was not a cursed monster, a prince born of the forest of darkness. Ancaria wanted to buy Quinlan, but the boss refused to sell. The boss considered this leech to be their money-making machine. Ancaria immediately countered, saying that he was not a leech but a vampire prince. This instantly frightened the boss because vampires were considered ominous creatures at the time and could potentially be cursed. To save his own life, the boss immediately sold Quinlan to Ancaria. After Ancaria purchased Quinlan, she took him to a jungle hut. Facing the bloodthirsty Quinlan, Ancaria was not afraid. As she watched Ancaria's pulsing blood vessels, Quinlan uncontrollably extended his stinger. Fortunately, Ancaria managed to bring back Quinlan's humanity in time. Ancaria begins to tell Quinlan about Quinlan's life. There were a total of 7 vampire progenitors in the world, and his father was the 7th-ranked blood ancestor. He was undoubtedly being pursued by his father. Ancaria's purpose was to train Quinlan in order to kill the blood ancestor in the future. And so, Quinlan and Ancaria secluded themselves in the jungle for 2 years, until one day, when Quinlan sensed someone tracking him after returning home from an outing. Quinlan quickly took cover in a tent, and soon a group of vampires barged in. Quietly, they approached the bed, preparing to attack Ancaria. Quinlan took him out just in time. Trained by Ancaria, Quinlan had become incredibly formidable in combat, making these small vampires no match for him. Ancaria woke up to the sound of the fight and immediately realized that they were sent by the blood ancestor. So, Ancaria prepared to take Quinlan to a new place to live. However, Quinlan wanted to wait for the blood ancestor to come, as it would allow him to fulfill his mission. But Ancaria says Quinlan's no match for him yet. Thus, Quinlan and Ancaria continued their search for a new dwelling together. After crossing several snow-capped mountains, the two finally settled in a cave. Unexpectedly, at this moment, the blood ancestor arrived. Based on the intelligence, Quinlan immediately grabbed his sword upon seeing him, but the blood ancestor did not attack. Instead, he tried to persuade Quinlan to join his blood army. However, influenced by Ancaria, as a vampire prince, Quinlan vowed to fight for humanity in his lifetime. Seeing that Quinlan was stubborn, the blood ancestor broke the entrance of the cave. Soon, a large number of boulders piled up at the entrance, blocking the way out. The blood ancestor's goal was to make the hungry Quinlan drink Ancaria's blood to unleash his wild instincts. And so, the two were trapped for 3 days and 3 nights. Ancaria, now weak, was barely hanging on. She hoped that Quinlan could drink her blood to store strength, or else he would be powerless when the blood ancestor returned. To give Quinlan the strength to fight the blood ancestor block, Ancaria cut her own neck. As she watched the blood gush out, the hungry Quinlan extended his stinger and bit into her. After an unknown amount of time, the blood ancestor returned to the cave once again. Ancaria, by now, was already a lifeless corpse. Seeing that Quinlan had consumed human blood, the blood ancestor invited him to join once more, but Quinlan decisively refused the blood ancestor's invitation. Quinlan launched an attack directly, but the blood ancestor easily evaded it. Ancaria had told him that he was not yet a match for the blood ancestor. He would wait until he grew stronger before seeking revenge against the blood ancestor. Thus, Quinlan instantly left the cave. Quinlan and F, carrying the oxydolumen, are preparing to lure up the blood ancestor. F first goes to a supermarket and finds a blood. Everything the blood sees or hears will be known by the blood ancestor. Quinlan then approaches and controls the blood, and after finishing, F takes out the oxydolumen and presents a few requests to the blood ancestor.
You're gonna have to come through on your end. Here are the terms. You will show up yourself, not your Nazi butler. You will bring my son. You will show him to me before I give you the book. He will be unharmed. He will be human. The exchange will occur just after sundown. The location, a favorite fishing spot of Zach and mine. He knows it. Not Kelly. No one else. If you don't bring him, you'll know that he is dead or turned, and you will never get the book. Blink if you understand. I'm hanging up now.
Quinlan asks F to rescue Zack and leave the rest to him. Abraham and the others track the oxidolumen based on its location. To successfully complete the mission, Vasily brings 2 silver grenades. At this moment, Abraham realizes something is wrong because the Bloods cannot cross the river, yet the oxidolumen is located in the middle of the river. F arrives at the agreed-upon location, Brighton Beach, by boat. After landing, he anxiously waits, from dusk until evening. At this time, as promised, the Blood Ancestor arrives at the destination. F takes the oxidolumen out of his backpack. He demands that the Blood Ancestor only let Kelly and Zack come over. After obtaining the Blood's consent, Kelly takes Zack and walks over. When they approach, he signals Kelly to stop. He wants to make sure that Zack has not been turned into a Blood. Kelly takes off her mask, only to find that she is a feeler. The feeler quickly rushes towards F and knocks him down. In a dangerous moment, F uses the silver oxidolumen to strike the feeler's face, pressing him against the wall and burning his face with the oxidolumen. Kelly immediately comes to help, but F blocks her stinger. Then, the two engage in a fight. The feelers attacks F again, and the oxidolumen accidentally falls to the ground. Kelly picks up the oxidolumen and runs towards the Blood Ancestor. While fighting the feelers, F pulls out a silver sword. By this time, the Blood Ancestor has already put the oxidolumen into his bag. At that moment, Blood Ancestor's men were suddenly fired upon, so it was Quinlan who came out of ambush. At the same time, Abraham and the others have also arrived at the beach based on the location. After getting off the car, Vasily notices a Navy SEAL team up ahead. He starts shouting, but when they turn around, Vasily realizes that they have all been turned into Bloods. However, they ignored Vasily and started shooting at Quinlan. Despite Quinlan's formidable combat skills, he couldn't withstand the onslaught of bullets. Abraham immediately threw a silver grenade, completely eliminating the Blood soldiers. Then, Vasily threw another grenade at the Blood Ancestor. Caught off guard, the Blood Ancestor was instantly burned by the silver grenade, causing him to struggle in pain. Seeing this, Quinlan approached with a bone sword and decapitated the Blood Ancestor. Afterwards, Quinlan, heavily injured, collapsed on the ground, and everyone immediately rushed to check on him. At that moment, a red bloodworm wriggled out of the Blood Ancestor body and started moving towards the sewer. Abraham happened to witness this, but he didn't know what it was. Upon returning, F immediately performed surgery on Quinlan. After removing the bullets from Quinlan's body, F proceeded to stitch up the wounds. Meanwhile, Vasily was happy that they had finally defeated the Blood after months of confrontation. However, Abraham wore a worried expression, concerned that the Blood might not be completely eradicated. After completing the surgery, F emerged from the room. Vasily questioned why F was with Quinlan, holding the oxidolumen, searching for the Blood Ancestor. F didn't hide anything and revealed the details of his deal with the Blood Ancestor. Abraham and the others were furious upon hearing this betrayal. Abraham didn't hesitate to kick F out of the team. Disheartened, F left the place. However, at that moment, he was targeted by a Blood. Ever since the beheading of the Blood Ancestor, the Blood lost control. Fortunately, F noticed in time and successfully killed the Blood. On the other side, Zack was still confined in a small dark room when sudden knocking was heard. Thinking it was his mother Kelly returning, but outside the door was a hungry Bloods. Upon hearing the human voice, he started violently pounding on the door. Unexpectedly, the Blood managed to open the door and invade Zack's room. Kelly arrived just in time to save Zack. Meanwhile, when Quinlan regained consciousness, Abraham immediately approached him. According to the logic, Quinlan, being the Blood Ancestor's son, should have died along with him. However, the other Blood, except for their lack of discipline, remained the same as before. Abraham believed that the Blood Ancestor hadn't truly died, so he wanted Quinlan to take him to the patriarchs to find the truth. Quinlan listened and took Abraham to the originals. Quinlan then took Abraham to the originals and began to tell them about his beheading of Blood Ancestor. The conversation revealed that Blood Ancestor wasn't really dead, just without the carcass. Abraham mentioned seeing a red bloodworm and hoped the originals could provide an explanation.
If you did not kill the Crimson Worm, you did not slay the Master.
What worm is this?
The essence of his being. He has not yet taken another host, but when he does, he will be just as powerful as before.
Quinlan was angry. Quinlan drew his sword and pointed it at the originals. The vampire warriors began to draw their guns and take aim. There were so many of them that Quinlan had no choice but to put away his bone sword. Quinlan calmed down and said goodbye to the originals. He was going to join Abraham on the Oxedo Lumen to find a way to kill the blood ancestor. Gus has to draw 300 milliliters of blood every day, and he does this for his mother's sake. Taking advantage of his mother's mealtime, he quickly takes control of her. Then, he puts a helmet on her head. Drawing blood every day has made Gus very weak, so he needs to ensure his own safety. If he turns into a Bloods, his mother will also not be able to survive. At that moment, there is a hurried knocking at the door. After questioning, it is revealed that Angel has arrived. In order to avoid exposing his mother, Gus can only come up with an excuse to send him away. However, just as Gus collapses heavily due to excessive blood loss, Angel senses that something is wrong and forcefully breaks into the house. Upon entering, he sees Gus lying on the floor and immediately helps him up. But when they reach the living room, the sight of the blood still startles Angel. After a short rest, Gus slowly recovers and then tells Angel about how he has been feeding his blood mother. Angel is shocked to hear this. He has never seen such a filial son, but Gus's body cannot sustain this situation for long. So Angel proposes to kill her, and Gus is reluctant to hear it. However, Gus is reluctant, stating that his mother is still his mother even if she becomes a blood, maybe even develop an antidote for the virus. Helpless, Angel engages in a heated argument with Gus. Angel prepares to kill Gus's mother forcefully. Seeing this, Gus stands in front of him and picks up an axe from the table. The two start grappling, driven by his desperate desire to save his mother. Gus unleashes all his strength and pins Angel against the wall, warning him not to have any intentions towards his mother again. Just then, a siren is heard from downstairs. Gus immediately goes to the window to check. The police have come to search the building, and if his mother is discovered, she will be shot on the spot. So, Gus quickly brings in a wheelchair, preparing to escape with his mother. Angel, deeply moved by Gus's filial love, decides to help him. They take the elevator to the ground floor, but the first floor is full of cops. Gus pushed his mother toward the door while the police searched the room. However, just as success seems imminent, they unexpectedly collide with a police officer who has just entered the door. Despite their desperate attempts to explain, the cloth-covered mother is just too weird. The police insisted on checking it out, so Gus had no choice but to lift the cloth. The police officer then asks them to remove their helmets. Angel comes up with a plan and cuts the rope that restrains the blood. Just at this moment, two police officers came in. Gus and the other person immediately turned their heads and ran. A couple more cops came from behind, and that's how the two were beaten up. Then they were arrested. Soon, the two of them were taken to prison, where the police did not take their fingerprints or collect their blood. Instead, the criminals were placed in a basketball court. It was during dinner that Gus finally understood the situation. It turned out that the government lacked manpower to fight against the blood, so they forcibly prisoners for combat. Soon, Gus and the other person were given their first mission. The police gave them some cold weapons and asked them to clean up a tunnel infested with blood. Gus, of course, didn't want to go, but the cops said if he didn't, he'd be shot on the spot. Unable to face the police's tyranny, Gus could only temporarily yield.